All right. Remember the music, Bill, if you don't mind? Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunday morning service here at Unity of Stuart. A pleasure to be with you as always. And welcome to those joining us online. We are glad to have you in the space as well, enjoying our time together as usual on a Sunday morning. Means opening the mind and relaxing into a space of sacred presence. And so we just want to invite you to settle in, relax your mind, and begin to breathe consciously. Because as we explore these sacred teachings, they are teachings that are designed to encourage the direct experience. So it's not just an intellectual curiosity or an abstract way of thinking. It is a way of entering into something that's here and now, but we're just missing it because our consciousness is tuned to a very surface reality. And so by relaxing, we can open up to a deeper presence. And just take a few moments for that. Conscious breath. So we just want to feel this opening to a more spacious quality in the present moment. Continue to relax through a deepening and slowing down of your breath. And most importantly, become aware of awareness, or begin to sense or feel more into witnessing the present moment. As you witness, you become the watcher of your thoughts, the watcher of your emotional states, the watcher of your bodily sensations, the watcher of what's arising in the present moment, whatever it may be. Simply witness. And you'll also become more attuned to witnessing the judgments or the inner commentary that is arising as well. And so as the witness, you are not the judgments, you are not the thoughts, the emotions, or the bodily sensations. You become disidentified from all phenomena, inner and outer, and you simply abide as the witness. And one of the last little layers to let go of is also to let go of the concept of being the witness. Just feel that raw and immediate presence of witnessing without any concept. Just pure, naked awareness. as the Buddhists like to call it. And so this is ground zero in our journey this morning, being in a state of witnessing. It is what allows us to enter into deeper states of consciousness. Remember, this journey is a journey through your mind. It's a very subtle journey. And what the terrain is, is felt within. So you don't have to go anywhere physically to go on this journey. And we're going to be looking today, in an unusual sense, at our inner landscape. We're going to explore this idea of first becoming aware of how important it is to be the witness and not get caught or snared in the phenomena that arises through your thoughts and your feelings, your emotions. But also to realize that there is a deeper work that must go on if we are to fulfill our potential. And that's really what this earth walk seems to be when you really spend some time looking at these deeper spiritual traditions. As Jesus likes to say in A Course in Miracles, the body is a framework for developing abilities. And so we have these latent or hidden potentials within consciousness. And it's through this choice and intention to awaken these hidden potentials that allow us to become more than we thought possible, to actually fulfill the ideals that we want, to actually experience the true sense of being happy and free. These are all, again, concepts, wishful thinking, if we stay within the untransformed state of the lower mind. But it's through this efforting and intentional way of journeying inward that these hidden potentials begin to come to birth, come to light. And we begin to feel the power and the gift of what we didn't know about ourselves becoming a real lived possibility. So we're going to begin today with some poetry, just to get the pump primed. And this is from Hafiz. And the title is We Add to Ourselves or Detract. And he says, every time you open your mouth and let a sound out, you alert the prey. And who is not hunting because of some hunger? What you seek may run in different ways, or people you know may begin to snarl within when they see you coming. We add to ourselves or detract whenever we speak. Our words turn into an entity and a magnetic field someone has to reckon with. I have found it is best to be on good terms with as much as one can, controlling the notes from the flute, from the body, that can rise. Yes, we add to ourselves or detract in some ways with each movement. I have increased my worth so much, a treasury have I become. I hope you loot. So the importance of what we say, even what we think, it produces a magnetic field and energy that can be palpably felt by other people. Because one of the things that we become aware of as we undergo this transformation in consciousness is that all minds are joined, that we are telepathically linked, despite what the five physical senses show us as if there's an empty space between who we are as the body. Within subtler space, we have subtle energy currents that connect all of us. And so whatever we think, whatever we say is going through this circulatory system and either adding to or detracting from the general feeling of where we are and who we think we are and what is possible. And so when we get together, we have to realize that sometimes We trigger the best in certain people, and other times we cause people to snarl, as Hafiz says. And one of the things we want to point out in our journey this morning is we want to look at who we are and how we show up in the present moment, because that impacts everyone. And we'll know how we're showing up by the feedback we're getting. See, the body is a feedback system. Our relationships are feedback systems. The world at large is a feedback system. And so what you'll find then is a way of checking yourself, almost like checking your phone. That when there's a feedback system, you get to see what's showing up, and then you'll be able to adjust yourself in a way that aligns more with your deeper truth and your deeper identity or higher self. Another one from Hafiz. This one is, you better rethink this. In case you forget, pain is there to help with your decisions. Like if you pick up a pot that is too hot, it will burn you. That quick, sharp sting arrives in a second saying, you made a mistake. You better rethink this. And if you were walking in a jungle and a roar came from some dense brush up ahead, would you then walk straight into that unless you were a giant looking to have some fun and duke it out with some beast for a little morning exercise? It's all around and built into our senses, warnings about things we just should not do. Why? Because the dance floor wants to be polished with your feet on it at night. How will you do that sitting at home nursing wounds or feeling depressed? So again, this feedback system is occurring all around us all the time. What we do oftentimes is go unconscious. We numb out, we distract ourselves, we're not checking in. Sometimes you can sense a cold coming on, and you can actually will, if you're in a balanced state, that you don't have those effects. Or you can sense trouble brewing in a relationship, and if you're aware and acting with a higher intention, you can avoid the pitfalls that are right there ready to be hatched in that relationship because of these old patterns of getting back into these well-worn conflict states. So it's about paying attention, being aware, recognizing that you have this feedback system at your availability every moment. In the teachings of Sri Aurobindo, he has this understanding, what he calls environmental consciousness, or the circumconscient. And what the circumconscient is, in a nutshell, basically, is the aura, that you have not only this ability to be conscious and aware of what's going on in your internal state, but your consciousness also goes out into the environment. And so as Aurobindo explains, there are these environmental influences that come in, and if you're asleep and you're not checking who's at the door, sometimes our doors and windows are wide open for any kind of invasion or influence. And we get it, and we realize we're in upset, or we're sick, or we're troubled, or we're depressed. And oftentimes it's because we weren't aware of who we were with, even if we were snarling when they showed up. Sometimes you're with somebody and you're like, I can't believe this person is here so negative and all the time complaining. And if you're not watching your inner judgment, that judgment makes you vulnerable to being influenced by their mental state. It's really important to get. So you're invulnerable to their mental state if you're resting in your true nature and you're clear and you're witnessing. But if you're distracted, you're asleep at the wheel, and your doors and windows are open, that can easily come in and influence you. And haven't you had that experience? You walk away from exchanging with somebody and it just made you feel really down or like you need a shower. So this is all grist for our conversation this morning. That what you want to recognize is that your journey is a journey of attention. So if you're here this morning, pay attention, be present, awake. Watch what's feeding back in your environment. Look at the distractions that may be coming in to take you off the mark of this conversation. And be willing to veto those distractions. This is something that we saw in the Seth material, that the conscious mind has what he calls in the Seth material the power to veto. Actually, Jesus mentions this in the Course as well. So whatever influences are coming in, you're always at the level of choice to let them in or not. You can actually say no. In fact, that's the way to get into the quiet mind. The power of your no gives you access to the quiet mind, because you could say no to getting pulled away by distractions. You could say no to getting lost in thought. You can say no to going over these memories and regrets. You can just clear the space. And with your power of no, you actually set up this, what do they call it, a Fermi cage? Where no influences, no energies, no wavelengths can get in. And you're in this clear space. And then when that silence comes, you can actually begin to discover this hidden landscape. But you can't do it when your mind is distracted or restless. And then finally from Hafiz, let me think a second. Some great high wire act, the path to God becomes. And look at that long pole that is also needed to balance you so you don't fall. And look at that long pole that is also needed to gain balance so you don't fall. Let me think a second. How about, in part, doing something that you know will be good for you, that you have not yet done? And of course, humility. And of course, kindness. So in this witnessing consciousness, it's often emphasized to be passive, right? You're going quiet, you're going silent, and it's very important to understand, as we've been saying, these deeper parts of you. But there's also an active piece, an active witnessing. Really important to get. So what Hafiz is pointing out here is not only do you balance and get rid of or clear the distractions, but you then act in a procreative way where you actually cause light to show up by acting with loving kindness, being compassionate, forgiving others, going out of your way to do something good for yourself or others. This begins to set that impetus in motion, that kind of laying, planting seeds for future growth. Okay? So what we like to point out here on Sunday mornings is that there's always this outer and inner part of the teaching, that there's what's often called the exoteric, the outer spiritual teaching, and the esoteric, or the hidden inner teaching. And the inner teaching is what we've been really focusing on here, and especially this morning, by saying that there is a hidden landscape, that we must unveil these hidden potentials that must be actualized. And we actually give birth to a higher version of ourself. So in A Course in Miracles, he says all of this whole journey that we're talking about this morning, it's founded upon trust. If you don't have trust in this process, you'll never begin. And it's not trust in your own strength, it's trust in the divine grace that actually brings you that desire, that inspiration, and the energy to begin this inner journey. So there's the quieting down, the witnessing, the silencing, and then the calling, the asking, the opening for this grace to come in. Without that, we stay caterpillars and never undergo the transformation of the esoteric teaching. The esoteric teaching, remember, it takes you from the outside surface personality, and it opens the access to these latent potentials that literally have you undergo an inner light revolution. You become aware of an inner light realm, an inner light body, deeper sources of wisdom and insight and power and creativity and joy that seem literally impossible to the surface personality, just like flying is to the caterpillar. But all of this is a well-tread path, and we have the cross-cultural evidence that has been going on for millennia on this planet. And if you're here listening, there's something already arising within you that is desirous to know more. And just that desire begins to call down the higher force or the higher presence of grace. And that begins to move in you and have effects to open up this potential. And the more that you sense this higher grace operating in your life, the more you'll begin to trust it and begin to realize that it's taking you on this well-worn path. It's a path that many have crossed before. And so there are ways of those that have gone before to give the guideposts and the ways or the maps to it. And one of the great maps that we have in our present day is the Course. And in his section on trust, Jesus says in the Manual for Teachers, this is the foundation on which those traveling this journey are able to fulfill what they set out to do. So without trusting in the higher power, there's no way that you can reach the ideal happiness, joy, love, divine presence. And so he says, those that are traveling on this journey have trust in the world because they have learned that the world is not governed by the laws the world made up. In other words, there's the outer surface reality that most people are asleep and unaware of the deeper truth or the deeper life. And we think that the world is governed and controlled by what's going on at the governmental, institutional level. The laws that the world made up, this fabricated, artificial reality. And so none of them really have control. That's why, in the gospel story, when Jesus went to Pontius Pilate after he was arrested, and Pilate said to him, "Don't you know I can, exonerate you or kill you?" And Jesus' response was, "You wouldn't have any power if it wasn't given to you from above." So the only reason why things get effected at this level is because at this deeper level, this hidden or occult level, the forces, the powers, the energies are coming in. And we see it on the screen of the surface world. But that's not where the causes are. And as you begin to unveil your own consciousness, you begin to operate within that deeper space. And in order to do that, you have to trust. You'll be taken through the eye of the needle within your own heart. And you'll be born again as a light being within a field of light. that is actually interconnected with all life and is life. And your intentions and your thoughts and your mind energy have more focus and more power when you're awake at that level of your true nature, because then you begin to move the force of your consciousness in alignment with truth, and it changes the readout on the screen of the physical world. Otherwise, we're puppets, we're sleepwalkers in our own conditioned consciousness bubble that's oftentimes being manhandled and controlled by cultural influences. That, as Terence McKenna once said, culture is not your friend. So it says here that those that are on this journey of transforming have trust in the world because they've learned that the world is not governed by the laws the world made up. It is governed by a higher power that is in them, in us, but not of us. Right? That's the other thing. When you go beyond the veil and you awaken to this higher potential within your own consciousness, you shed the ego like the butterfly sheds the caterpillar. And you literally are metamorphosed. You're renewed in your mind, transformed into light. And as a living light being who's presencing its connection or union with the divine, you're no longer alone in your own mind. Not only are you interbeing with all creation, but you're in a vertical, direct union, which gets clearer and clearer and more potent with your source. And so as that communication channel opens, that source consciousness will then move through you, and together, as he says in A Course in Miracles, we will do the impossible because our wills will be joined. And when our wills are joined, infinite potentiality becomes possible. So again, this higher power is in us, but not of us. It is this power that keeps all things safe. So that's the other benefit of going beyond the veil of your sleepy, lethargic, and darkened, limited belief system and identity. You begin to realize there's no loss. There are no victims. Everything is a play on the surface here, and it could be tragic. It could be difficult. But when you go beyond the veil and you go beyond the levels of ignorance, you begin to recognize that all things are actually kept safe within the heart of God. That everything that's truly created is created safe and in peace forever, even if it's temporarily seeing itself as separated and lost. Its root or its true essence never leaves the divine presence. And it's only a matter of time before every living entity comes to realize this. And so just like dreaming something tragic, when you wake the next morning, the tragedy is gone. You're in a different realm where that tragedy never can reach you, and it never really occurred the way you thought it did. It occurred within a dreamscape, much like what occurs here at the surface level of physicality. When you begin to attune to that higher power that is within you, again, you're not only ushered into a different realm of consciousness, but that realm of consciousness assures you that everyone is forever safe. And even if you have gone through what seems to be tremendous loss at the level of the body, divorce, loved ones dying, etc., those beings are always joined with you at this deeper level and are in communication with you at this deeper level. And so the mind begins to become more and more steady and secure in its trust that nothing can truly harm any living being at the level of reality. In dream, yes. That's why he says at one point in A Course in Miracles, he says, only the creations of light are real. Everything else, he goes on to say, is your own nightmare. What a leveling statement. What a way of actually giving yourself the ability to veto all of the nightmarish fantasies that your mind plagues itself with. Consider, he says, consider resigning as your own teacher. Consider resigning as your own teacher because you've taught yourself poorly. We've taught ourselves that the nightmare is real. Loss is real. Loneliness is real. Depression is real. And the only reason why we believe it is because we haven't gone beyond the veil within ourselves. This is the invitation. Wallow in your sleep and your nightmare, or come home. And it says not only does this power prove to the mind that now is in touch with it, that all things are safe, it is through this power that those who are awake look on a forgiven world. So just like a dreamer who's having a nightmare that they're being accosted or being abused or victimized or taken advantage of, when you wake from that dream, you realize these were all your dream figures. You were doing it to yourself. So that dream was not clear in its context. That's, again, another reason why we have to resign as our own teacher. Because at the level of the body, with the ego as our guide or teacher, we believe the dream or the nightmare is real, and people are really doing terrible things to us and to others. And by believing that, we reinforce it and make it real. But as we begin to awaken to this higher power that is within us and not of us, we can look upon a forgiven world because we awake from being the dreamer. Or rather, we awake from the dream and realize we're the dreamer. This is a categorical leap, a quantum leap. Right? You go from being an isolated little consciousness to being a universal being, awake, divine. And so there are steps along the way in order to get to a place where we are not only willing to accept it, but that we've made the instrument ready to accept it. You know, I've heard recently this analogy that the divine, right, the Christ mind, the divine mind, wants to play on our instrument, wants to come through, as we've been talking about, come through our thoughts, come through our emotions, come through the physical body and extend itself into the world. To be a channel, right, where our will is joined with the divine will. But the analogy goes is when we are in this untransformed state and our minds are distracted and preoccupied with trivia and little things and selfish things, the analogy is like we're one of those little child pianos. Remember those? Those plastic pianos? And it's like ding, ding, ding. And the divine, a master pianist, wants to play music through us. But if we haven't made our instrument ready, think about the cacophony, the noise that comes through the instrument when it's not preparing itself to meet this divine union. It doesn't have the resonance or the tone or the presence for this to extend clearly, for the music to be beautiful. And that's why sometimes we get this spiritual urge to awaken, and we're really, working on ourselves, and we want to share it with others, and yet we're playing this child's piano. So then when we get around some of our old acquaintances that maybe we used to party with or hang out with or live a different lifestyle with, They snarl when they see us coming because we're playing in a way that is still not tuned to the deeper presence. We're trying, and there will be a period of, trial and error, but we do have to make the instrument ready. And that's where I think we'll take it next. Is this all clear? Yes. So this book is selections from the works of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. It's entitled Our Many Selves. And we have a class coming up on the work of Sri Aurobindo, so if you're interested in this deeper teaching, just go to my website, living-acim.com. So this is a quote from the Mother. To work for your perfection, the first step is to become conscious of yourself, of the different parts of your being and their respective activities. You must learn to distinguish these different parts, one from another, so that you may become clearly aware of the origin of the movements that occur in you, the many impulses, reactions, and conflicting wills that drive you into action. It is an assiduous study which demands much perseverance and sincerity. For man's nature, especially his mental nature, has a spontaneous tendency to give a favorable explanation for everything he thinks, feels, says, and does. Did you hear that? We have a tendency to always give ourselves a pass. So if we walk away from an encounter where in that feedback of the relationship, the person was pissed off at us, we walk away going, I was right, they were wrong. Obviously, we're always giving ourselves a pass. And it's dangerous to your own growth and development to do that. That's why if somebody's in a tiff with you, if you're not having harmony in your relationship, always ask the first question, is there anything about myself that I'm not aware of here? Where am I coming from right now? Why would they be upset? And you have to become more astute at being the witness in those moments. Remember, witnessing is ground zero for your journey. You can't go on this journey if you're not the witness. If you're not the witness and you're trying to do the spiritual life, you're just living out of a conditioned, conceptual mind. And it's all fantasy and make-believe. The witness brings you to ground zero, and it cuts through this false thinking so that you can actually enter the higher ranges of yourself. And your relationships, once your intention is there to wake up, your relationships literally become the living laboratories that will give you access to what parts of your being need to be tinkered with, what attitudes, what prejudices are coming up. And that's why you'll oftentimes see it, and he actually says this in that section on the Course, that when you set out on this journey, first, yes, there's trust, and then you get into a relationship with the higher power, and then the higher power begins to go to work in your life, and it begins to show you where you're out of attunement with the higher reality. And the way that the higher power shows you where you're out of attunement is you touch hot stoves and hot pots, and you get shocked, you get conflict, you get trouble in your experience. There is a dis-ease, a disquiet, a challenge. And if we're always trying to give ourselves a pass, we are just not paying attention to what would help us transform ourselves. Now, sitting here on a Sunday morning, I don't know what's going on in your head. But if you don't think that this, as the mother had just told us, is an assiduous journey of self-study, and it takes great sincerity and commitment, if you're trying to get off by taking a pill and waking up, this ain't the journey for you. Because there will be times where all that you've invested in as yourself is going to undergo what Jesus calls a sorting out. At first, actually, it's an undoing. And if you're not living 100% to wake up, and you're not devoted to undergoing this divine transformation for yourself, then like you're going to just turn tail and run. And so this undoing process is the first step on this journey. And he says it need not be painful, but it usually is so experienced. He says, it seems as if things are being taken away. That's what it feels like. People leave. Relationships end. Marriages are gone. Jobs are lost. Right? There's some kind of feeling a loss. It seems like things are being taken away, and it is rarely understood initially that their lack of value is merely being recognized. So we have people in our life oftentimes, we have hobbies and desires in our life that are trying to fill a void, a need. And it's the ego need, right? The need to feel loved, the need to feel safe, the need to feel happy, right? And when you have this intention to wake up and you want to go inward to experience your true self, those false crutches have to go because they're blocks to your way in. And those codependent relationship dynamics and toxic relationship patterns, as well-worn and somewhat comfortable as they may feel at times, become taken away. Right? And he says, it usually is experienced very painfully, troubling. But as you begin to grow in your maturity, you begin to realize that this undoing process is actually for your benefit. You're beginning to get a sense of, I was actually devaluing myself by being in these relationships. I was limiting myself. I was harming myself and others by misusing them for my own ego agenda. Right? And so it takes a little time to let go of these fantasies and these ways of being, and it could be very painful. It's a death and rebirth process. But don't think you're alone in that. That once you invite this higher grace into your life, he's got you. She's got you. And you will be led through the dark night. And he goes on about this period of undoing. He says, how can lack of value be perceived unless the perceiver is in a position where he must see things in a different light? So one of the things that happens is you begin to have a spiritual intuition or a higher discerning quality where you were once asleep in these relationships, in this lifestyle, gets taken away, breaks down, they go away. And as a result of being in that stressor environment, that pressure cooker, something is born in you that gives you a higher sense of discernment, a new perspective. You begin to evaluate and assess from a different dimension than the former way of thinking that you were lost in. You have to see from a different light. What was valueless was something that you were enamored with. Now you're beginning to see it was never going to satisfy. It was only there because of your blind need and your codependency, let's say. But once you have this higher discerning quality, you're going to see, oh, so it was being taken away for my good, so that I can actually come into happiness, not leave myself outside of it. And then he says about this person that's at this stage of the journey, he is not yet at a point at which he can make the shift entirely internally. So remember, we start out as these caterpillars, totally identified at the surface level. We might be hearing the esoteric teaching every week. It's starting to make sense a little bit more, but for the most part, we are the surface self. And so things have to start changing on the surface because we don't really know or sense this way inward yet. But lo and behold, as we keep moving forward with the intention to wake up, the internal pathway begins to open. But we haven't been able yet to make that shift entirely, to see that this is all a journey in consciousness, that we're dreaming it all. So he meets us where we think we are and works with us at this level of discourse to open us to higher ranges of perception that will actually prove to you you've been dreaming the whole thing, but step by step. What will be the golden thread through the whole journey is your witnessing state. I'll say it again, it's ground zero. So even as you're going through this conversation, hopefully participating in the journey of the conversation, never lose sight of being the witness. And so he says, we're not yet able at this stage to make the shift internally, and so the plan will sometimes call for changes in what seem to be external circumstances. These changes are always helpful. When the seeker has learned that much, you're able to go to the second level, the next stage. When you begin to realize they're being taken away because of my core intention to wake up, to be authentic, to be my real self, to be truly happy, to know my source and myself. That's why all of this is happening. Once I'm secure and trust that, I can go to the next stage. And we'll just go into this one last stage here. There's 5 total, but we'll just cover 2. So the next stage is this period of sorting out. And he says at this stage of sorting out, right, your house cleaning. This is always somewhat difficult. So we go from painful to difficult, right? And yet at the same time, this grace gives us the joy of it. Did you ever have that experience? Something's really difficult, maybe, even physical training for something, deep exercise, like really painful exercises, and yet there's a joy. You're getting that adrenaline rush because of the intensity of the exercise. Even though your muscles are screaming out in pain, you're like, yeah. So this is what's going to happen internally. Your old ways of being are going to scream out. Why me? Why is this happening to me? How could they be going away from me? Why is everything seeming to like drop away? Why am I losing everything? And at the same time, there's a part of your mind that's like, yeah, now we can get to the real deal. Now we can get to the good stuff. So it's somewhat difficult because having learned that the changes in his life are always helpful, right? That's what got you here now. Everything that's happening is for your good, right? Now you must divide all things on the basis of whether they increase your connection to God or are helpful, or they hamper it. So you realize that all things are helpful. Now you're going to sort out what's blocking more light and what's bringing more light. And this is where your veto power really kicks in. You begin to choose only what blesses, only what brings joy, only what brings peace, only loving thoughts, only kind thoughts. This is what begins to really develop internally. And so he will find that many, if not most of the things he valued before will merely hinder his ability to transfer what he has learned to the new situations that are arising. So you're on a different journey now. You're going from caterpillar land towards butterfly land or butterfly world. As a result, you're going to start to have to think like a butterfly. You're going to have to start relating to others like a butterfly. And so everything that you valued and bought into as real at the caterpillar level doesn't really go towards butterfly world. It holds you in caterpillar world. And even though it was what you always knew, you're going to have to sort out and realize that most of what you've been living has hampered your happiness and what you really want. And so, the new situations that arise are going to give you the opportunity to bring into birth or to access this potential of the butterfly. Like being here, right now. Consider the conversation you're involving yourself in. Think of the thoughts that have occurred to you and what you've heard for yourself this morning. It's giving you a complete and full distinction. Not a choice between illusions. Which illusions do you want? And Jesus is my co-pilot. And I can keep living my life from my own ego. No, what you're hearing and what you've called forth for yourself is the true transformation and how to begin to really accelerate that in your life. You called this forth. This is your dream. So as the witness right now, sort out those voices of the caterpillar who's trying to use caterpillar concepts, caterpillar thinking, and caterpillar doubting to keep you in caterpillar world and somehow not listen to the steps that will be required of you to make your journey. So this new situation that's arising in your life is giving you more and more light and access to your true nature, to your true self. And it's not because John is talking to you, it's because you brought John forth in your dream. See, if you think John's outside of you, you're thinking like a caterpillar. If you think John is some other guy, you're thinking like a caterpillar. This is your voice. This is your potential waiting to access in your awareness. And depending on your intention and what you want, you can make it more and more strongly felt in your awareness. And then finishing up here. Because he has valued what is really valueless, he will not generalize the lesson for fear of loss and sacrifice. In other words, we are expert at mitigating the effects of how we've totally believed ourselves to be caterpillars. And so one of the reasons why we have resistance, hesitancy, shutting down, closing off, half listening. I bet sometimes I sound like Charlie Brown's teacher up here, right? What's going on psychologically is we're trying to mitigate the disaster that we think the esoteric teaching would bring into our life. It would be the apocalypse. It would be the total ruination of everything I am, everything I valued, everything I wanted, all that I held dear and cherished would be gone. And so the ego psychology has a whole security system for that. And he tells us in the Course, every defense within the caterpillar world is made to attack these ideas that you're calling forth for yourself to wake up. So as the witness, you can begin to sort out these voices. That's why, again, witnessing is ground zero. If you're not the witness, 1 minute you're going to be totally in the mask of, I hate this thought of waking up. I want it my way. I want to keep being John. I want to stay asleep. I don't want to forgive those bastards. And then the other side, you'll be totally identified with, oh, well, I should go to Unity this morning and maybe, hear this message for myself. It inspires me. And then that other voice comes in after church and it's like, you'll never go back there. You're going to wait 6 months till you go back there again. It's like, it's this constant tug of war. If you're the witness, there's that voice, there's that voice. Choose. What do I want? What is this voice and its world offering to me? Let me assess it like I'm at a business meeting. This is a business proposal. Do I want to invest in this devastating, unfulfilling world where I never find what I'm looking for? Or do I want to move in the direction of my happiness? As the witness, you actively choose those thoughts. You don't get lost in them. And you begin to recognize that pot's hot. I don't want to touch that pot anymore. Blue bag's going to go around. I'm out of time, it seems. So if you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, feel free to click the link below, donate to the 8 a.m. service. We thank you for supporting us, and we look forward to seeing you live and in person whenever you can make it down here. Any thoughts, questions, comments from you guys? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. You're glad you didn't listen to other voice that said, don't go to church this morning? We are too, Jerry. Yeah, thank you. We bless this offering as we bless the hands that offered it, and we intend that it bring light into this world, that it bring more thoughts of the butterflies to their minds. And so it is. Amen. Final thoughts here? Questions, comments before we close out? Good? All right, let's rise, seal the deal. And we just become again, as always that we are, this bright, clear, watchful awareness beyond all judgments of good and evil, resting in the light of our true nature. And it's this true light that has us remember that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen. Have a beautiful morning, everybody. Course in Miracles tomorrow night, 7:15 p.m. Love to see you here.